Hey everyone, this is Richard, and thanks for joining the podcast that asks you what's spinning. I just got done listening to Somery by Descendents myself. It's a good compilation album of a lot of their best tracks. And while that music is mostly from the early to mid 80s, they are still going strong. In fact, I just saw them last fall in Dallas with Less Than Jake opening, and I recently saw that they were doing some shows with Hagfish as an opener. So if they ever come to wherever you live, I recommend going to see them. It's a pretty strong show. I want to take a quick moment to thank you guys for taking the time to listen. Also wanted to let you know that you can find us at Spinning Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. All right, so as far as things going on in this week's episode, I thought I'd get to a list because I know that everybody likes lists, and I came across one here that it has the top-selling vinyl albums from 2018. The source for this list is the Nielsen Music, and the tracking period I believe was December 29th, 2017 through January 3rd of 2019. So these are ranked in volume of sales. At number 10 is the only album that was actually released in the year 2018. All of the others are older releases, but at number 10 we have Panic at the Disco, Pray for the Wicked. I haven't listened to this one actually. Panic at the Disco, I really loved their first album, but after that it kind of fell off a little bit for me, so I'll have to give this one a try. Up at number 9, Amy Winehouse, Back to Black. Amy Winehouse is another one. I have not listened to her stuff that wasn't put out on mainstream radio. You know, I thought those songs were okay, but it never seemed like something I was really going to get into. At number 8, Queen's Greatest Hits. I'm sure this was spurred on a little bit by the Bohemian Rhapsody movie. It doesn't really matter what spurred it on. It's a great album, a great collection of Queen tracks. I believe they have Greatest Hits and Greatest Hits 2 out on vinyl now. At number 7 is Bob Marley and the Wailers, Legend, the Best Of. I love this album. It takes me back to high school. That was kind of my introduction to Bob Marley. And a friend of mine had this on cassette, and I borrowed it and listened to it all the time. Really great album. I've got this one myself on vinyl, as well as the Queen Greatest Hits. But this Bob Marley one I've got in a red, yellow, and green striped colored vinyl. Number 6, Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. That's always a strong one. Not surprised to see that up there. Number 5, Prince and the Revolution, Purple Rain. Man, I love that soundtrack. It's probably on the list of best soundtracks for me. In fact, that'd be a good episode to do sometime, is best soundtracks. But Purple Rain, I mean, so many strong hits on that one. Let's Go Crazy, Wind Does Cry, Purple Rain, of course. Just such an excellent album. Number 4, The Beatles, Abbey Road. Makes sense that it would make the list. Number 3, we spoke about it last week a little bit, Fleetwood Mac, Rumours. It's one always people recommend when you get into vinyl. That's one of the top ones on their list to recommend to people. Number 2, man, this takes me back to when I was just a wee little tyke, but Michael Jackson, Thriller. It's one I remember my parents having on vinyl, and I would sit there and look at the vinyl, read the lyrics, look at all the tracks on the back, and I just remember them playing that all the time. And then at number 1 is another soundtrack. It's the soundtrack from Guardians of the Galaxy, Awesome Mix 1. I could see why that would be up there. I've got that one too. It's a good collection of some classic songs. I know this one made a big impact to cassette sales. They released this one on cassette, and it really kind of spurred on that whole cassette movement. So that's good to see that it's at the list there. I'm kind of surprised it was still selling in the number 1 slot for 2018, but again, it is a good collection of songs. Okay, so moving on. I've had a little bit of feedback on last week's new to collecting episode. A couple of ideas of some things to discuss that weren't discussed in that episode, so I'll try to circle back to those in maybe the next couple of weeks. For today's episode, a couple of things I wanted to tackle. The first item is I thought I'd have one of the kids come on and talk about an album that I've recently given them that they've enjoyed. I've been going through my collection lately and picking out a few items that maybe I've gotten newer versions of or just better copies of, and instead of just selling those or taking them to some shop, I've decided to pass them down to the kids, let them take a listen, and then tell me what they think about the album and maybe what their favorite track is. So I thought that might be a little bit of fun to do with the show today. Then we'll move on to, I was going to do a dive into Fleetwood Mac's Rumours because, like I said, everyone always suggests it. I wouldn't say it's my favorite album, but it is a very excellent album to have on vinyl. So I thought we'd take a look at that and see why it's such a great thing to have on vinyl and what makes it a good album. Alright, so like I mentioned, I thought we'd start with talking with my youngest about an album that they had recently. In fact, I gave them the choice of 2 different albums, which were New Miserable Experience by the Gin Blossoms and Synchronicity by the Police. Which album did you choose?
Synchronicity by the Police.
Alright, that's probably the one I would have chosen as well. I'm a big Sting fan, and especially Stuart Copeland fan. He's probably my all-time favorite drummer. So why did you pick this album over the Gin Blossoms album?
I just think that's overall better. Probably the voices.
The music just spoke to you more?
Yeah.
All right. So I think everyone's familiar with this album, maybe not. What were your top 3 favorites?
Synchronicity 1. Apparently there are 2 on this.
Yeah.
Walking in Your Footsteps, and Every Breath You Take. In order.
Those are the order? Okay.
Yeah, specifically.
That's cool. I think if I were picking these, I probably would pick Every Breath You Take, definitely, King of Pain, and Wrapped Around Your Finger. Those are my 3 favorite, and they're tracks 7, 8, and 9. So you liked 1, 2, and 7. And so what about Synchronicity did you like best?
Well, the tune is really good.
Is it? Is it the speed of the song or the vocals of the song? What was kind of your favorite part?
Probably the speed of it.
The speed of it. And this was the first record I gave you, right?
Yeah.
All right. So
out of 3.
Out of 3 so far. So this one might always hold a special place in your heart, huh? Since it's your first one.
Yeah.
First piece of vinyl. What else can you tell us about this album? Like anything that really stands out to you?
Well, the songs are really good.
Yeah.
They're just overall good.
Okay.
Hey, Mr. Dinosaur, you really couldn't ask for more. You're God's favorite creature, but you didn't have a future. Walking in your footsteps. Walking in your footsteps.
What about Walking in Your Footsteps? I find that an interesting choice because I never cared for that song, but I could see, I guess, how it would appeal to you. What about it did you like?
I just liked it. I don't know why.
Do you remember anything it
But-
talked about or anything like that?
No.
Oh, well, that one talks about dinosaurs and how they used to roam.
I didn't realize that was
Yeah.
because I was just listening to it mostly.
Yeah, I could see that one kind of being fun for a younger audience. To me, when I first heard it, I heard it as an adult, and I was like, wait, what? What are they doing here? Of course, they've always done some odd tracks. There's Miss Gradenko on that first side of the album. That's kind of an odd one. Let's see, wait, what other album have I given you? There's the Gin Blossoms one.
Rebel Yell.
Oh, Billy Idol, Rebel Yell. That's right. What do you think about that one?
That one is pretty good.
What if I had given you the choice between all 3 on which one to come on here and talk about today? Which one would you have picked?
I can't decide between Rebel Yell or Synchronicity, but probably Rebel Yell, maybe.
Yeah, that is a tough call. I like Rebel Yell a lot too. That one my parents had on cassette when I was a kid, and I've always loved it. It kind of, to me, I think that album was just ahead of its time. All right, well, that's cool. Anything else you want to say to everybody?
Just keep listening.
All right. Thanks for stopping by, and maybe we'll do this again with a next album. All right, well, now on to our main topic for today's episode, and that is the album Rumours by Fleetwood Mac. So, Rumours is the 11th album by Fleetwood Mac as a band, but only the second with Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks in the lineup. The album was mainly recorded at the studio The Record Plant in Sausalito, California. Stevie Wonder's Songs in the Key of Life was also recorded there, as well as John Fogerty's Center Field, Huey Lewis and the News, Sports, Metallica's Load, and some other albums by Jefferson Starship, America, Santana, Heart. And it's kind of interesting because Rumours was a highly celebrated album. It was critically acclaimed. So it's interesting that it came about, during so much turmoil and stuff for the band. After their first album with Buckingham and Nicks, they toured pretty heavily. The McVies got divorced. Lindsey and Stevie split up. And so there was all these things going on with the band that kind of caused them to stop speaking to each other socially and only talking about music. And, maybe it's some of that pain and, those challenges that were going on that led them to produce such a strong album. For me, what stands out about this album is the production quality. I can't think of any other albums from this time period that sound just as sharp and as clear as this one does. And I'm not just talking about the newer releases. I remember listening to this, it's probably been about 15 years now, but it was the first one that I played that was one of my dad's old albums that he had passed down. And, it was the original release that he had purchased when it came out, and it sounded so different than anything else I put on that turntable. And I think for me, the warmth and tone of that album is what made me fall in love with vinyl from an audio standpoint. The tracks on it are, you're not just getting an album with maybe like one hit or, one strong song on there. Some of the bigger tracks from this album include Dreams, Don't Stop is on here. Go Your Own Way, which I recently heard Lindsey Buckingham talking about, and it was kind of like his letter to Stevie Nicks, him saying, hey, go your own way. This is it's obviously not working for you, and so, do what you want to do.
You can go your own way. Go your own way. You can call it another lonely day.
On the second side of the album, there's The Chain. You Make Lovin' Fun. Gold Dust Woman. I think Gold Dust Woman is probably what I think of when I think of Stevie Nicks. And I definitely don't mean that from the perspective of cocaine usage, which the song is about. But I just mean that vocally, to me, this is what a Stevie Nicks song sounds like. At least, if I were to play one back in my head, this is what I hear.
Wake up in the morning, see your sunrise, clouds go down.
And now it's time for Richard's pick of the album. So for me, my favorite track of this album, it has to be The Chain. There are a lot of things I love about this song. I like the slow build up to it with just the kick drum keeping time. the great harmonies that are just present throughout the whole album.
Listen to the wind blow, watch the sun rise.
The incredibly catchy chorus that kind of echoes the theme of struggles in love that are present throughout the album.
If you don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying we'll never break the jam.
But to me, the greatest part of this song is the final third of the song that starts with this incredible bass line played by John McVie. And just this subtle tapping on the snare by Mick Fleetwood as it just builds up into a great finish. Such a great song. What I really like about that one is that it's one of the few Fleetwood Mac songs where the writing credits are credited to the entire band, and a lot of that goes to different parts of the song are actually pieced together from other songs. I think one was a Christine McVie song. The beginning of the song, I think they said appeared on a Buckingham Nicks album from 1973. So they kind of pieced together all these different parts and just built incredible song from all these pieces. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that look into Fleetwood Mac's Rumours. My goal with these album discussions or album looks is to kind of inform people who maybe have heard about some of these albums but never actually taken a look and thought about, I don't know, should I get into that? To kind of inform people of what all is out there. I know a lot of times in years past I was like, how can I get into some new or different kind of music that I don't always listen to? And so, maybe this is a way people can kind of get a feel for what's out there and decide whether that's something they want to add to their collection or not. Along those lines, I've got a few ideas for some episodes in the next upcoming weeks. Bringing on some additional people to come chat about some albums, maybe albums I don't even know that much about. And so through that dialogue, that conversation, we can explore those albums and learn about them and get a feel for why they're important to people. I always like knowing why certain things are important to people because, maybe it's something that I just turned away at first glance, or maybe it's a genre I wasn't that interested in. But once I hear somebody's reasoning behind why they're passionate about something and why they enjoy it, it kind of gives me new insight and maybe sparks my interest and turns it into something that I want to check out. So hopefully we can do that for you, help out your collection as if that needs any help, right? As always, you can check us out on social media. Again, it's at Spinning Podcast. That's on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. If you're enjoying the show, subscribe on iTunes. Going to try to add to a few other outlets for podcasts. And I guess that's it for this week. I hope everyone has a good week, and we'll talk to you again later.